Before going into the topic details, I want to bring your attention to the UPSC coaching programs offered by ClearIAS. ClearIAS offers online and offline courses to help candidates get selected for prestigious government services like IAS, IPS, or IFS. ClearIAS, Prelims cum Mains, PCM course, provides a highly effective study plan, well-organized subject-wise videos, study materials, mock exams, and guidance to cover the entire GS syllabus of UPSC CSE Prelims, Mains, and Interview systematically. As a limited period offer, there is a 40% discount on our online courses. Enroll now.
Periodic Labor Force Survey. So let's talk about the Periodic Labor Force Survey. It was released recently. And what is the target time? The period actually, it is actually from the July of 2023 to June 2024. So last year, 2023 July to this year June, that is the target period. So that is the period in which they are actually going to have the research on. And it is actually released by NSSO, National Statistical Office, which is definitely under Ministry of Statistics and Program Implementation. So all these things are logical. Statistics, all the things, National Statistical Office under Ministry of Statistics and Program Implementation. All these things are logical till now. Now we are actually going ahead with the different highlights of this particular report. And before going into the details or highlights, let me also remind you again that this is a very important data. Statistics, the numbers are important. Make sure that you just go through the numbers. Even if you don't remember the numbers, just keep in your mind if the particular trend is increasing or decreasing. That is actually important for the prelims aspect also. Consider the following statements about the Periodic Labor Force Survey report. According to the support, then they give you 3 or 4 statements. Then you have to understand if there is increasing or decreasing. So they can save you 2 marks in the prelims. So what are the different features regarding this report? So you have to understand that it started in 2017 was the first time in this report was actually released. What is this actually, what data it is actually releasing? It is actually releasing certain indicators of employment and unemployment and certain other data also. And what kind of indicators they're actually using? They're using certain kind of indicators. What kind of indicators they're usually using? The worker population ratio, the labor force participation rate, the unemployment rate, etc. And they will give you the activity status, the usual status, and the current weekly status of people. That is what the report is actually focusing on. We are going into the numbers of these kind of things, these kind of terms and terminologies. What is the work? Okay, let me go to the details. What is the before going into the numbers? What is the worker population ratio? Any idea? What is the worker population ratio? The name itself says that. Out of population, how many people are there actually for work? That is the basic thing. That is the percentage of, we can say, employed people. Already, already people who have jobs. That is what the thing is that. So out of the population, how many percentage of people are working? Percentage of people are working in the population. That is actually the thing of worker population ratio. These are not people who are available for work. They are people actually working in the population. So the percentage of people working in the population is worker population ratio, one thing. Let's include the everything. All those people who are maybe we can say earning income. Anyone. Second thing is actually about the labor force participation ratio, the LFPR. That's the second thing. What is actually, if you look at the LFPR, it is actually the percentage of the people in the labor force. So this is actually people working. So this is the percentage of people in the labor force. So what do you mean by labor force of India? Yes, people working and people willing to work, people who are available to work, all these come under the labor force. So anyone who is actually willing to work or working or searching for employment, all the unemployed people who are also searching for employment come under the labor force. Working people means those who are working something and getting money, extra salary, etc. Labor force is quite vast. Labor force is actually the working people, and it also includes people who are actually searching for employment. That is actually the important thing. There we can say working people plus people who are actually available to work. That also are included. So, or you can say seeking for work. So this is a broader perspective. So this is the percentage of labor force participation rate, the percentage of labor force in the population. One is working, one is labor force. I hope the thing is actually clear. And next thing is actually about the unemployment rate. That is the number of unemployed people in the labor force. That those who are actually in the labor force, certain people are actually now seeking employment or they are unemployment. They just lost their job. So how many people in the labor force are without any employment? That is the unemployment rate. To understand the three things which they are actually covering. There are multiple other things also. These are the three different important things. Then the other three things, that is they are differently releasing some kind of certain kind of statuses, activity status, usual status, and current weekly status. They're also covered under the report. And based on the reference period, they're actually releasing certain kinds of statuses. For example, if the person is employed, if the person is unemployed, if the person is actually going through cyclical unemployment. So I hope you have started your economic things. There is actually something like different kinds of employment, circular unemployment, cyclical unemployment, frictional unemployment, just like that. So if one person actually recently got fired from a company, or if one person committed, resigned from a company, but he or she has not got another job. So there is 1 month of gap. So suppose one person resigned in October, he joins the next company in December. So in between that, there is November, there is no job. So that is actually a certain kind of unemployment. So what is the status of certain persons? That is what they are aiming by activity status. And they have certain kinds of reference period also. For example, activity status simply means employed, unemployed, etc. Usual status, they actually take 365 days of reference period. So that is the usual status. 1 year, June 2023 to July 2024. What is the actual usual status? They just take in 365 days. And then current weekly status, just like I said, they actually simply take a 7 days or a 1 week reference period. So just say that in that 1 week, those people were unemployed. In that next 1 week, they were more employed. So they can find a time in between that 1 year where there is too much of employment, where there is less employment opportunities created. So this is the different status. Please don't go much detail into these kind of words and all. It is actually better if you study from the basics and from the economic class you just study. Otherwise, you'll get too much confused. We just better get the current affairs aspect of it. That is the highlight of the report. That is the important thing we have to get from today's class. Otherwise, we have to start from the very simple, basic of the scratches of the economy. So we just go to the current affairs aspect. That is the different highlights from the report. And as the first initial report of the Hindu newspaper also suggests, okay, the report which came in Hindu of this particular news is actually the highlight was the unemployment rate. Why? Because it was stagnant. That is the most important thing. UPSC can ask you that the unemployment rate is increased or decreased, etc. But it was stagnant for the first time since the survey started. So that is the most important data which we have to extract. That is, for the first time since 2017, the unemployment rate has remained stagnant. That is an important thing. And it does not increase, it does not decrease, remains unchanged. And what is the unemployment rate? They're saying is that it was somewhere like 3.2%. And I'm saying that 3.2% is actually the number they're actually saying. And the next thing about the labor force participation rate, they're saying is that it actually increased significantly. The word they used was significantly. So the labor force participation rate increased significantly means that more people are actually coming to the fora. More people are searching for employment. More people are coming to working, etc. That is what they're saying. Need not necessarily mean that everyone is working. Maybe people are coming searching for employment. Ultimately, the labor force participation rate is actually significantly increasing. And they're actually saying is that the national average in the level is actually somewhere close to 60.1%. So they're saying almost 60% of the national level people are actually searching for employment. That is actually searching or working. That is what they're saying. And the next thing is actually about the rural areas. So we have to say that in the labor force participation, the national level, somewhere like this. And in the rural areas, they say that it is much more. In the rural areas, the labor force participation rate is somewhere close to 63.7%, which means that earlier there was a trend that is people used to migrate to the cities from the village areas. Now they saw a trend that is in the cities, there is that much number. For example, in the cities, there are 1,000 people. But in the rural areas, after the pandemic, after the COVID, more people are going to the rural areas, which means that there is something like reverse migration. So people are moving back to the rural areas, to the villages. So in the rural areas, the labor force participation rate is more than the national average. Right, the national average is 60%, but in the rural areas, the average of LFPR is actually 63%. Result, why it is actually happening? Because of the reverse migration after the COVID, after the pandemic, and which means that more people are in the rural areas searching or working for employment. That is the thing. The next thing is actually about the worker population ratios also. We'll just worker population ratio. So what is happening with the worker population ratio? It has actually increased. So more people are actually working in the population right now compared to the last survey actually. And they're saying is that around 58.2% actually of the population actually working. So what is the labor force participation rate? Somewhere close to 60. So in the population, 60% are there. They are working for employment. They are working. They are seeking, etc., like that. Out of the 60, they are saying is that somewhere close to 58. Just remember the 58. 58% is actually working. That is the worker population rate in 2023, 2024. Right. And one small aspect in the 58% is that out of the total male population, that is out of the total male population, they are saying that around 76% of the males are actually working. They have work. They have the jobs out of the total male population in India. But when it comes to the female population, they are saying is that around 40% of the female have work. So out of, if we have 100 women taken the sample size from India, they are saying is that out of the 100 women, only 40 women have job. And out of the 100 male, actually, 76%, 76 male have job. That is what they are still saying. They're talking about the worker population ratio. How many people have work, right? And you have to also keep in mind the small aspect, not the small aspect, the important aspect that even when we count only 40% is officially working, you know what the, like maybe your mothers, aunties, etc., aunts, etc., who are actually housewives, who are actually working, who are really working for the home. They're doing the unpaid labor, right? So that also has to be recognized, but it is not recognized here because it is not formal employment. They're not getting salary, right? So that issue has to be addressed when there's certain issue like women participation in the labor force or women participation in the employment, economy, etc. When it is asked, we can say that almost half the population of India is actually women, but only 40% of the women population in India are actually having actual employment. What about the rest? They are definitely working, but they are getting unemployment. They are getting unpaid labor. They are doing unpaid labor like housewives. But their service is also valuable. If only we count that labor also, if only they value that hard work also, then only the economy will be boosted. That also we can actually write in paper 2, right? And paper 4 also, GS paper, ethics paper also. And what about the job quality also? We have to say that more number of people are actually are marginalized, which means that the job quality is actually, slightly increased only. The marginalized jobs are actually more. Why we are saying? We are taking the example of salaried class. People who are actually having proper salary, proper formal employment. So what is the share of the salaried class actually? They have actually increased to somewhere close to 21.7%. It is slightly increased. 0.8% increase is there. So the percentage of salaried class slightly increased, somewhere close to 21.7. We already said that 60.1% is working. Out of that, 21.7 is actually formal. What about the rest? They're actually in the informal sector. They have their own businesses. They have their own other gig economy, just like I'm teaching to you. This is actually a gig platform, right? I'm just teaching you in this platform only. I don't own the business. I don't actually, getting that profit is actually not mine. So that kind of, if I'm actually Uber driver, just like that, if I'm actually doing certain kinds of services, I'm in the gig sector. I'm actually not a formal employee. I'm actually in the informal sector. So that is what they're actually saying. Out of 60%, only around 22% is actually formal. Rest is informal. That is what they are saying. And just because, and last but not the least, we have to also talk about the urban-rural disparity, or we can say divergence. What do you mean by the differences between urban and rural spaces is that the unemployment in the rural sector is actually decreasing slightly. The more number of people are actually migrating back to the rural areas, they're searching for jobs, they're actually finding certain kinds of self-employment opportunities. And what the survey is saying is that in the rural areas, unemployment rate is actually decreasing. In the rural areas, unemployment is actually decreasing, which means that more job opportunities are created in the rural areas. So rural is better employment or improvement in the employment opportunities. That is what the thing is actually saying. Right. Right. Then last but not the least, we have to talk about the self-employment rate. So all these reasons are actually attributed to the rise in self-employment. So right after COVID, there were a lot of disruptions in the economy. A lot of jobs were actually lost. So people are actually trying to form their own jobs, their own ventures, etc. So there is a huge rise in self-employment opportunities. That is what they are saying. And not just self-employment. People are more coming out to volunteer jobs. They are coming out to work for the family. If there is actually family business, people are coming out to work for the families, etc. And a lot of unpaid work is also increasing. So people are moving out of the so-called formal sectors of the economy. That is what the survey is actually saying. And we have to also make that what do you mean by self-made, or we can say the what is say self-employment sectors is actually about entrepreneurial, we can say. Maybe starting a small company, starting a small shop. There are people who are actually quitting engineering jobs and they're coming to, and then what do you say, starting videography, that is marriage videography, wedding videography, right? Wedding photography, etc. Small they ventures they are starting, but they are getting established. They're getting successful because they are going with the trend. Actually, they are whenever there's a trend is changing, going with that. So there are people who even retire from even civil services, even from IPS, IAS posts also, because they feel that okay, we can do certain different things. There are people who just search in the YouTube, people who resign from the service. There are people who retired or resigned, and then before they actually start certain kind of companies also for their own. So there are actually a lot of different things which are happening. Entrepreneurial things are actually happening. Self-made, self-employment ventures are actually happening. So there is definitely a rise in informal sector. That is what the survey is actually attributing. Right. This is the basic stuff, what is the data about the survey. We'll understand the last data, that is what are the issues in the employment generation. That is, we are talking about formal employment generation. That the survey also discussed. So we'll understand it briefly. And the first thing is actually about what is actually currently happening, the informalization of the employment sector. Informalization of the employment, that is what the survey is actually pointing at. It is a fact. Lot of different self-employment opportunities, entrepreneurial opportunities are actually being created. So there is a reduction, or we can say there is a improvement in the or increase in the informalization of the employment. And there are certain reasons why they are actually pointing on the informalization of the employment sector. Why? One thing is actually the agriculture sector. So they are saying that there is a reverse migration. People are going to the rural areas. Why? After COVID, why they are actually moving to that areas? Because they see that there is a slight increase in the agriculture sector. And that is why people are moving to the rural areas. They are finding employment there. Maybe the climate is actually better in certain parts of India. So agriculture is doing better, business, of course. So that is one reason of the informalization of employment. And the second reason, so people are leaving their salaried jobs. They're going to the rural areas, cultivating something, or they're part of some agriculture. One thing. Second thing is that they are actually something like that is known as the technological revolution. So because of the technological revolution of artificial intelligence, Internet of Things, etc., there is also a reason for self-employment. They're getting more and more technology. They're actually using it to produce more and more new companies, etc. New applications are being developed. So people are quitting their jobs, constructing their own actually ventures. That is why one other reason, that is better technology is actually providing informalization of employment. So it is basically the skill people are actually creating, and entrepreneurial ventures, new companies are getting created. That is another reason they're saying better skilled people in India right now. Right. So that is another thing. And we can say, what is educated, skilled people. And then automation. Automation is also another possibility, because there are people who are afraid of the artificial intelligence. They fear that when AI comes, my job will be lost. So before my job is lost, I should better start something of my own. That also is actually a possible, and that also is actually one thing which is actually widely discussed, the automation that is actually happening right now. And also, there are certain policies which actually, we can say, backfired. Which were the recent policies which was that much criticized of the current government? There were mainly two things. Two important decisions of the government which actually shake the entire nation. Labor codes, but labor codes are definitely there, but which all affected everyone, like us, everyone, students, people, businessmen, industrialists, government sector. the common citizens, basically. Two large decisions. Outright, it was shock for us. One evening, he just addressed us. Demonetization. So that is one important thing. The certain policies which definitely has an impact on the economy. One was actually demonetization. So when the demonetization happened, there were definitely some objectives were there. We cannot question the objectives of the scheme, of course. But what was the result? They definitely wanted to stop the fake currencies. There are still fake currencies. They wanted to stop the black, black economy, of course. It is still working. So a lot of different objectives were there. The objectives are really good. The intentions were definitely good, we can say. But still, what is the result? All the things which they were actually supposed to stop is actually still working. So that actually was definitely a flaw. There is no doubt about that. One other thing was about the GST. GST is actually, we can say, it is an inevitable evil. We need to definitely rationalize our tax systems. But when the GST was actually implemented, it was a huge celebration in the initial times. And they actually created certain kind of slabs. For example, 28% slab, something like that, 18% slab, something like that. But GST is supposed to be a one single tax. But still we had 4 different tax. And in addition to the 4 tax, there were some kind of sin tax, luxury tax, etc. like that. So in effect, we are actually not getting a proper GST. That is one point, which if you ask any businessman, actually, they will definitely tell you that there are certain flaws in the GST. So these 2 things were definitely a groundbreaking things. We cannot question the intention, but the result was not as per plan. So this also led to an increase in the informalization of the employment. Right. That is what the system is actually saying. And ultimately, because of that, when the employment is increasing, obviously one result is the inequality. Inequality will definitely increase because certain people will definitely go become richer and certain people will go fall into the poverty. That is what ultimately happens when employment is actually informal. That is, no regular salary will be there. Sometimes they'll be getting lakhs and lakhs of rupees. Some people will not be getting anything. That kind of inequality will be widened. That is the result of this kind of informalization of the informalization of the employment. That is actually all about the reports of the periodic labor force survey.